guys, welcome back to my podcast, you English loving family that's always there for me. Yes, so on today's podcast episode we're going to be talking about 10 shocking facts about the English language that I think you would find really interesting, to add to your knowledge base, not to take your fancy, no, but just to help you know more about the English language. When I was reading these up, I was also intrigued myself because I was like, oh, this happened and how that the English language has evolved over the years. Like 1,000 years ago there was this in the English language, now there is not it, all the stuff. And another thing I like to state here is James is not going to be around today. He had to go for an emergency meeting, and so I have to do my podcast episode alone, and that is getting more interesting and fun. So I just have to keep the energies going, and do it alone. Yes. So the English language is a beautiful, complicated, fun, and infuriating language all at once. I love the adjectives I just used right now. And so this is what makes learning the English language a very rewarding experience. And from difficult spelling to words that describe the intense feelings you get when you see a cute kitten, every aspect of the English language has its own story. So we're going to be looking at shocking facts about the English language, and let's go. So the first thing I like to talk about is William Shakespeare added over 1,000 words to the English language. Almost everyone in the world has heard about the great William Shakespeare, the famous English poet and playwright of the 16th century. From love sonnets to plays like Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, Shakespeare has greatly influenced English literature. But did you know that the English language itself wouldn't be the same without Shakespeare? And so Shakespeare invented over 1,000 words, which he incorporated in his writings, and today native speakers use these words in everyday speech. So let's look at some fantastic words and phrases invented by this famous poet, and they are addiction. So addiction means to be psychologically or physically dependent on something, and it's usually a drug. Another one is bedazzled. Bedazzled means you're blinded by something incredibly wonderful. Cold-blooded. Cold-blooded means, it can be used for either an animal with cold blood, like a reptile, or a way to describe someone who's cruel and indifferent to emotion. Another one is break the ice. I remember James used the break the ice in our last podcast episode, and so it was invented by William Shakespeare. So break the ice means to relieve the tension or silence in a conversation by talking. And so to see some of the other interesting sayings and words, Shakespeare invented, make sure you check out these articles, Mental Floss and The Intrepid Guide. And I'm going to leave the links to them in my description of the podcast, so just check them out, they're not too long. Okay, so let's move on. Number 2, most English words come from French or Old English, and you can use this to your advantage. Following the Norman conquest in 1066, I remember on my old podcast, the Venture podcast, I talked about the Norman conquest, and yes, we're going to leave that not for today. So, following the Norman conquest in 1066, French became the language used by the nobility in Britain. And meanwhile, the peasant and lower class continued to use the old language, which was made up of Germanic vocabulary. Now, eventually, intermarriage, brought about a mixing of the two languages, and Middle English, which is much closer to today's English, was born. So why does this matter to English learners? Well, this history can help you figure out when to use certain words. These words that come from French are often considered more formal or sophisticated, while others that come from Old English are more formal. Take the words commence and begin, for example, and they both mean to start. Commence is a much fancier word, and native English speakers would only use it in a more formal setting. And for example, you can use it while discussing, business affairs, you can say something like, the marketing team commenced work on the project. And then on the other hand, begin is a more casual word that native speakers use frequently. And can you guess which word comes from French and which one comes from the Old English? Commence is basically the same word that the French currently use. I think it's commencer, and it means to start. And then the word begin comes from the now unused Germanic word beginnen, which also means to start. Okay, let's move on. Number 3, English, or the English language, used to have a grammatical gender. I always thought this was the case, really, because in French you have, there's gender, there's the le and the la. In Spanish you also have el and la, but English is like really different. In our times it's, different. But once upon a time in the English language, there used to be gender, grammatical gender. Now, for example, Spanish speakers use gender articles el and la depending on whether a noun is masculine or feminine. El niño or something. I can't really say that. Okay, and so English, or the English language, used to have grammatical gender, but that doesn't anymore. Now, the book Gender Shifts in the History of English explains how English lost its grammatical gender system over time. Now, it actually makes it easier for learners, that the English language doesn't have gender today or gender rules. You only have to memorize a word's meaning, not its gender. In the French words, or French is really different, Spanish is really different, and other languages that exist in the world today, they're really different, because you can't just say, for example, if you want to say cut, like a cut in French, I think is le chat, something like that. I stand corrected. But in English, you just like the cut, everything, the definite article, the cut, the girl, the boy, the sister, and then when it's a vowel, you use and when it's a consonant, you use a, and it's just really not complicated at all. So let's go on. Okay, another shocking, fun, enlightening fact or fun fact about the English language is that the English used to have 29 letters instead of the current 26. So where did the 3 go? Really? So the English alphabet has gotten smaller over the years, and to find out which letters were added and which letters were omitted, please take a look at this New York Post article. So I'm going to open the article just for you. So I'm looking at the article right now, and it's the New York Post from 2015. It was written by Susanna Cahalan, and it's titled "The Stories Behind the Letters of Our Alphabet." Now, because I have a communications background, what I'm seeing here on this post is quite, similar or quite familiar with, what I was taught in school about, how language originated, how alphabets originated. It makes mention of hieroglyphs, of Egyptian hieroglyphs, and also makes mention of the fact that the English alphabet was greatly influenced by Roman, Egyptian alphabets, and so on and so forth. Okay, in the first paragraph, it talks about how our alphabet was a mess, and that is because many of our letters began as Egyptian hieroglyphs, symbols, and over 4,000 years ago. And so the English alphabet had, a lot of Greek and Roman influences thrown in, and it took, it's taken centuries, to drop off some letters and along the way before, our alphabet was born and all that. So please, I'm saying a lot right now and do not mind me. So if you want to learn more about this, just go on and read this article for yourself. So let's just go back to where we were. Okay, so the next one fact of the English language is making me laugh right now, because when I was in first year in university, I had an English term paper presentation where I talked about the longest word in the English language. And so that is the next fun fact. What is the longest word in the English language? And so I'm going to try to say it. I'm laughing right now because it's really funny to me. And so The longest word in the English language is pneumoultramicroscopic silico. It's so crazy, guys. Oh my god. So it's pneumonoultramicroscopic silicovolcanosus coniosis. Oh my god, I'm really killing this. I'm going to try it one more time. So the longest English word is pneumonoultramicroscopic silicovolcanosus coniosis, and it's a medical term that refers to a lung disease caused by inhaling sand dust or ash. So let's move to the next one. Now, number 6, the most commonly used adjective in the English language is good. Of course, different sources, come up with different answers for this, but good is usually listed among the most common adjective. Now, syllable count gives it the number 1 spot on the list, while word frequency data places it below a few adjectives such as other and new. Number 7. The most commonly used noun is time. Now, the Oxford English Dictionary has identified time as the most frequently used noun, and person received 2nd place, followed by year in the 3rd spot. Now, number 8 is the average English speaker only knows about between 20,000 and 30,000 words in the English language. Now, while this statistic from twin word still seems daunting, it'd be a comfort to learners, though you're not going to have to memorize all the millions of words, English words out there, and you'll still be understood. Now, number 9. There are approximately 1.5 billion English speakers in the world, and that is like 20% of the world's population. About 600 to 700 million of these are non-native and non-native speakers. So you can find out more about this, at St. George's International. Okay, then the next one is English, or the English language is the official language of the air. By the air, I mean airplane travel. So this means that when you're traveling by air, most likely you'd hear English. Many times you hear English, and then even notice that no matter where you're flying in the world, your pilot and flight attendants always know English, and this is why. And I would say, I think maybe some airports or some air travel lines or agencies have translators that can speak the native language of the people there. I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to also speak the native language of the people there. For example, if you're an air travel agency in Nigeria, in my country, I think it's really important that even though you are you want to speak English and announce that flight 456 is about to leave, please start boarding, or something like that. I also think it's necessary for you to have native speakers that can speak your native language speakers, like indigenous language speakers like Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, that just translate it, because maybe an old woman or a grandma is traveling to the UK for the first time. Do you expect her to know? Do you expect her to understand the whole British thing or understand English automatically? So I just think that's like a good suggestion, that for air travels, I think there should be like native indigenous language speakers, at the beck and call of these agencies, that can translate to the indigenous and native languages of this people, so that they can understand and be all on the same page. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to my podcast today. I am so excited that I did this. And yes, James is supposed to be around for the next episode. That is episode next. And yes, thank you so much. I hope you learned a lot. Maybe, or if you want to learn English, if you want me to be your personal tutor, I can do that for you comfortably. And my classes are flexible. You can learn from the comfort of your home. You don't really have to come physically to me. I have online classes that we can schedule, and they would definitely fit your schedule. I said schedule twice, but does it matter? No. Okay, so if you want to do that, just send me a voice message here on Spotify, or you can check me out on Facebook, Learn English with Ruth, or on YouTube, Learn English with Ruth also, and also on Instagram, Learn English with Ruth. So we just I'll just get to know you more, and then we'll just get going with your language lessons. I cannot overemphasize the need for a personal tutor. When I was learning some 7 years ago, I had a personal tutor once or twice, and I can tell you, it just helps you bridge the gap between a lot of difficulties that are in your head that a language teacher or a tutor is going to help you overcome. And so thank you so much, and I'm going to see you in my next podcast episode. Bye guys.